right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Raw Knowledge Podcast with your host, as ever, Alex Connor. And we're back. We're talking real. We're talking raw. It's fitness, training, nutrition, and everything alike. And join with me today from another part of the world, I've got Paul Revelia. How are you this morning?
Pretty good. By the end of this, I'm going to be giving you my fake Aussie accent. I'm pretty good at it.
Mate, this will be good because mine is all twanged up as well. It's very mixed. Well, you actually saying before we turned on the mics that you've been to Australia, you've got a lot of friends here, and you would move here in a heartbeat. Is that right?
Yeah, I just so one of my really good friends in college, he played basketball, I played baseball. He was an Aussie, and so we just I don't know. I always connected and vibed so well with him. His name's Brett Slaughter. He lives in Melbourne, and so when he moved back to Australia after college and did the whole family thing, I mean, and he's a true Aussie. He literally showed up at my house one year and just stayed on my couch for 3 months. Like, so we've been tight for years. So the first time when he got engaged, got married, he said, "You got to come over for my bucks." And see, that's an Aussie slang. See, I know the Aussie. I said, sure. So I came over for like 2 weeks. We did his bucks party. We did his wedding, traveled around, just the people in Australia, the vibe, the energy there. I just felt like it was a good match for my personality. It just seems like everybody's kind of focusing on doing the best they can with themselves. They don't worry about what other people are doing. I don't know. Everywhere I've been in Australia, I've just met awesome people. And I feel like I was born in the wrong country sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes you get that in life, or born in the wrong era of time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I can attest that the Australians, they're very down to earth and they're very humble for the most part. And I definitely have made some great friends. So perhaps we'll see you here in the Gold Coast at some point, hopefully when we open the F up, because it's been a bit tight lately.
Oh, we had plans. I mean, we had big plans for 2020 to come to Australia for the Arnold. I was going to stay for 2 weeks, do a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's just, it's been obviously for all of us a challenge believe me, I can't wait to book my next ticket, because me and Brett usually visit each other every year. I haven't seen him in 2 years now.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's not ideal, especially when it's close friends and family and all of those things in between. And like you said, it's messed a lot of people around. So yeah, it's time we get back on track. Now, for people listening, Paul, as well, we might mention this because we talked about geographical location. You're in Florida, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Tampa, Florida.
I've been to America a couple of times. I've not been to Florida per se, but I've heard the weather's pretty good. Is it similar to here, and is it quite warm now?
Heard. So I don't know if you were familiar with Holly Baxter, Lane's wife.
Yes, I know Holly.
She lives in Gold Coast, and she reckons it's very similar to Florida. Quite humid, hot year round. The winters are quite nice and mild. The summers are a little brutal.
Sounds very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as ever, Paul, as we always do, for people who might be unaware, give us a bit of a synopsis of who you are, what you do, but more importantly, why you do it.
So 2007, I guess I was just being really good in the gym, consistent. I grew up playing American sports, baseball, basketball. When my college athletic career ended, I decided I'm going to start lifting weights. When I started playing sports, even in high school, I was always very interested in the resistance training aspect. I loved the idea that I want a little more muscle in my chest. I can go do some bench pressing and things like that. So even through college, when my friends would be, going out, I was kind of sneaking into the gym to get a workout in. So then in my 20s, I started getting really consistent because now I just had a job and a lot of free time. So after like a decade of lifting weights, I was about 31 at the time, the internet started kind of being a place where you could actually go and learn about stuff. I'm going to date myself here a little bit. So probably about 2006, I started going on a website called bodybuilding.com and just reading people's threads, competition prep stuff, learning about natural bodybuilding. I reached out to a guy named Lee Norton at the time and said, "Hey, I'm interested in doing a natural bodybuilding competition." He said, "Great." We spent an entire year working towards that goal. I didn't just jump in. I said, okay, I'm going to spend a whole year training, eating, sleeping. In that time, I kind of adopted Lane's philosophies, which at the time were rogue, to say the least. I mean, people in my gym thought I was an idiot for eating a flexible diet, for doing things like high intensity cardio, for not doing things like, taking water pills and sitting in a sauna the day before the show. Like, the bodybuilding world has changed quite a lot in a decade. So I was kind of on the beginning of that trend. So as I started posting my content on the internet, as I started getting closer with Lane actually graduated college and moved to Tampa. So Lane and I became very close. At this time, Lane became one of the world leaders in, calling out charlatans. And, he was the same guy back then. He just had a little less following, but he had the same passions. So I was learning all the mistakes that were going on in the fitness and nutrition world. And I got to go to these seminars. Lane would host these camps. And, he would just bring me along and say, hey, do you want to come? And, I didn't think of it as an opportunity then. I'm so glad now that I look back and I said yes to all those things. He would take me to the Arnold, to the Olympia, to the camp, to the expos. He brought me to Australia, right, for one of his tours. I literally just dragged his bag around. But like, those were the things that I kind of cut my teeth on. And I got to meet people like Eric Helms, Dr. Joe, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino at University of South Florida. I could give you probably a list of 20 people with PhDs, even Jeremy Lineker, who didn't have a PhD at the time, but was working on it. Mike Zordos, all those kind of people that you get to be around. And it just helps you form kind of a thought process around your philosophies. So in about 2011, Lane was like, you really need to be a coach. You have all the right traits. So he convinced me to take a client. I took one client. That client changed my life because I realized, wow, I actually do love doing this. And so now it's been a decade. I started my own business called Pro Physique. It was just me for the first 4 years or so. I literally did everything, every YouTube video, Instagram post, every coaching thing, all my inquiries, website design, clothing, purchasing, every single aspect of my business. Got to a point, I want to say 2014 or 15, I was like, I can't do this anymore. My wife stepped in to help. I hired my first employee. Now it's 11 years into this business. We have 25 employees, 20 coaches, 2 dedicated people just for our internet facing products. So we're actually, now I joke all the time and I say, we're like a real company. Like we have like meetings and we have like, a schedule for things we're rolling out. We have projects we're working on. But my focus since day one has always been the same. And it's not to sound boastful, but it's just my focus. It's just what drives my decisions. And that is to be the best coach in the world. So whenever I'm thinking about, should we be doing this? I think, is this going to make me a better coach? And that's the philosophy that's driven Pro Physique. And that's where we are now.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that's a great synopsis, Paul. And I appreciate you walking us through that. And it's very insightful as well to me. Like you said, when you first, came in and you were fortunate enough to meet Lane, and then that brought you into that sort of circle, if you will. I think a lot of people who got into this industry, or when you get in, like you said, they are the minority. I know it was the same for me, and I was just browsing on simplyshredded.com back in the day.
I did some videos for them with Lane. You remember?
Right? Well, that's how I got onto Matt Ogus. And then I was like, hang on a minute. Like I was reading for everyone's profile and I'm like, hang on, this guy's doing it different, but he seems to look better. And then I was like, who's coaching this guy? I found Eric, and the rest is history. But like you said, they were, I think there's a bit of a change in tides now where, like you said, Lane has a massive following. There's Holly, there's a few people that sort of stay on the down low, like Zordos on the socials, but most of the guys now have bigger followings, and it seems to be having a bit of a change in tides where people are waking up a little bit, or there is more of us coming together with, and I don't want to sort of, team good guys, team bad guys, but unfortunately there's a blizzard of shit out there, and we need to help clear it up or have a bit of a North Star there. And that comes down to what you said there, Paul, which I love about, and I don't think it's boastful, it's accurate and it's confident, being the best coach in the world. Because ultimately, if you are a coach and you don't want to be the best, or you don't want to at least do your best, then I don't think it's for you. And I think there's a lot of people in the industry now, and we talked about this off camera, where they're just trying to sell, but they don't get results. And I always say, to my clients or people who come in contact with me, hey, even if it's not me, just look for 3 things in your coach. First of all, are they leading by example? Also, can they get results for the people? And what are their clients saying about them? Because ultimately, that's a really basic test, but most coaches don't pass it. Like, you know, um,
Not true.
so interesting stuff. You said you were, if I remember correctly, 31 when you started with Lang.
31 when I decided to do a bodybuilding competition. So I competed when I was 32. So I gave myself a full year. First time I ever went to a bodybuilding competition, I was 31. I walked in the door and thought, okay, it's going to be Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler and Phil Heath and all these kind of guys, right? I had no idea. You know, it was just a local show. It was called the Mid-Florida Muscle Classic in Orlando. Still happens to this day. And it was just a bunch of regular people getting on a bodybuilding stage. Now, back then, it was only a couple divisions. It was only bodybuilding and figure. I think that was it. There was no men's physique. It was bodybuilding. Now you had like the novice division, the masters division, the open bodybuilding. But seeing everyone up there, I thought, oh, wow, I can do that. That's not, you know, because in my head, I had been buying Flex magazine and, you know, Muscle and Fitness for so many years. You know, I'm thinking, okay, so there's going to be a bunch of Arnold and Francos on stage. No, it was just people, your neighbor, guy you worked with, that when they stripped down, put their tanner on and hit some poses, they looked amazing, but they looked normal. And I was, you know, I was under the impression that for me to compete in bodybuilding, I was going to have to do more steroids than, you know, Russian athletes, right? And I didn't want that. I really just wanted to like enjoy going to the gym because I was always able to change my physique with a little bit of effort. And when I saw people on stage that I thought, well, that doesn't seem unattainable at all to me, especially the novice division, which was at the time all first-time competitors. I thought, that's what I'm going to sign up and do. I'm going to do novice next year. I worked for one entire year, got on stage, did the novice division, won, and that was it. I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I love this. So yeah, it was, you know, and I had that foundation. I'd been lifting weights since I was probably 14, 15. God knows I made a lot of mistakes along the way. Probably trained chest half the time, right?
As you do.
Not until I decided to do a bodybuilding show did I really commit to like leg day and back day, right? But that's what was cool about the novice division. It was all guys that had great chests and biceps and usually nothing else. But that's what kind of drew me in. And then, you know, once you get that first taste of competition, you go, okay, I want to get better and come back. And that it's the same thing for me. And this is something, you know, as an older guy now, I'm 45, I look back at my life and I go, all the things that I've become passionate about or excited about are things that you start small and just gradually add pieces and get better. I play guitar, I do bodybuilding, you know, I'm building a business, I've gone back to school. Like education is kind of the same thing. You can't go to school day one and get a PhD. You've got to take this class so that you can take this class, so that you can take this class, so that you know, and it's the same thing with bodybuilding. You've got to train this muscle so now your pose has this shape, you know. Same thing with guitar. So I actually find this a very common trait amongst bodybuilders is that it's kind of just an extension of themselves in all assets of life. There's this quote that I love to say now, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I just find it so true. And that's why at 31, my life was good. You know, I had a good life. But at 41, I was a completely different person, different human being, and just excelling on many more levels.
No, that's a great quote, Paul. And what's quite inspiring to me, and I'm sure many others, is what you've achieved in that time. And I'm glad you mentioned about when you started training when you're 14, because that was something I was going to sort of inquire a little bit more about. Why was it so long before you stepped on stage? Because a lot of people now, obviously, they're starting really young. People would say, wow, like 31. Was there any reason why you didn't consider stepping on stage sooner?
I mean, to be fair, in the 90s, there just was no bodybuilding shows. I mean, you know, the state of Florida probably had 3 or 4 a year. We probably have more than 50 this year. There was also no way for me to find out about bodybuilding, right? Like, if you open up a Flex magazine, it doesn't tell you about the Tampa Classic. It tells you about the Olympia, the Arnold, the Night of Champions. So you just, you know, what really helped was when bodybuilding.com happened, and there was a section in there called, you know, bodybuilding shows in your area. And you could literally go and people would just put in information about shows. They would, you know, the promoters would go in there and kind of put some information in it. So that's how I found out about the show in Orlando. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have competed before 31, you know, because the dedication that you have to put into a contest prep, you know, my 20s were for me to really figure out who the hell I was. I needed to go out and just be independent. And that sometimes meant going on 3-day parties. I needed to go to the raves, you know, And then sometimes I needed to work 70 hours a week, right? So being a really good bodybuilder requires a certain level of consistency that, not for nothing, but I feel like for me to be the best person I am, I needed to not be that consistent. I needed to figure out what I enjoyed the most. I see a lot of guys my age now having like midlife crises because they literally went from high school to college, got a job, had a kid. They never had that wild decade. I had my wild decade, you know, and so I don't know that I would redo it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, that Paul. When you were talking, I'm just thinking where I mean, I resonate this back to myself because I feel like the 20s I've really been finding myself, and I'm turning 30 this year. I know that's laughable for people who are older, but no, honestly, my life from the past 2 years now with the trajectory of my business, I feel like I'm in the best place. But as my dad always says, he's like, oh, you were learning your crafts on like all of those experiences, those jobs, those things, and you always had fitness. It was always there. It was the thing, but you had to do all of that to kind of come back to it. I don't know if I would have the skill set, the mindset, like you said, the patience, the discipline to be where I am now. So I think that's a really good point, and perhaps a bit of success leaves clues there in many ways where people can sort of go, well, they don't need to rush, especially if you're not sure, because if you don't know what you want to do, then live life. Because either way, then you can live it, but something might call out to you along the way and you're going to develop yourself.
I've been very fortunate that I had some of my best friends are the kind of people that have always pushed me to like, because I don't want to say introverted, but I just get very comfortable in my routine. So I could have easily been the guy that went and got a bachelor's degree, got a master's degree, got a job, and after a decade had a mortgage and 2 kids. And I could have been that guy. There's nothing wrong with that guy. But my best friend in college said, we're not getting married till we're 35. We're going to travel around the world. We're going to get arrested. We're going to do dumb shit. We're going to be good people, but we're just going to fucking have experiences. And his phrase used to always be, when we're old, we're going to have some great stories. Right. And he used to always say that to me. And that's actually, like, so that's my best friend, Eric. My other best friend, like Brett, the guy I told you about in Australia, I would always just see his attitude towards things, and he would take things so easy and he was so laid back. I would often catch myself saying, okay, what would Brett do in this situation? And it's kind of like those kind of personalities that taught me, okay, I don't need to get into the rat race. The one thing about Aussies is, you guys typically do that 1 year abroad where you just kind of get out and go do things. They call it like walkabout, right? Like, so I actually got up and moved to England for 3 months in my early 20s because I thought, oh, that's fun. I'm going to go live in the UK. Lived in London on my own, got a job, got a flat, and just was by myself and made friends and stuff. And so those kind of experiences, had I not got them, and now I'm in this place where I have 3 kids, a thriving business, the mortgage, the American kind of lifestyle. If I didn't have that experience, I don't know if I would be craving those adventures. So yeah, like I said, I would never redo it. It's just, I think, at least in America, you feel like by the time you're 40, your life is over. I feel like when I hit 40, I'm just starting. It's crazy. That's why I love listening to Gary Vee. Gary Vee always talks about this, but I think my dad at 40 was like, not retired, but he just did his job and raised his kids, and that was it. I feel like at 40, I'm traveling every weekend, and we're doing so many positive things that I feel like, shit, am I going to be doing this at 70? Maybe. I'm not putting a cap on it anymore.
Yeah, and why not? And I stand by that. Travel is still one of the best educations you can get. And I mean, it is a shame now with the current situation that it is a little bit or a lot harder. But yeah, I'm like you, fortunate to travel, and there's just nothing like it. The people you meet, it makes you appreciate your home, other things. Like you said, you find yourself, you do some dumb shit. You go on these crazy adventures. But like you said, like, when it's all said and done, the memories are all that remain. No one's going to stand there at your funeral and be like, well, yep, he got a job, he bought a house, he had a nice car. It's like, no one's going to say that, man. They're going to be like, oh man, Gary, we had this wild time, me and Paul, we were over in Melbourne and shit, we got lucky. Like,
I've got some good Australia stories too. Good partying with Lane, like me, Eric, and Lane. Oh man, we had some good stories. So like, and I, what's funny is I remember like we went out 3 nights in a row with Lane where we literally went to dinner, had drinks, and didn't get back to the house till sunrise because we had to be back for the seminar. You know, we like bar hopped and went to the beach and got drinks and went to you know, like we just stayed out all night and just, you know, Eric Helms, I don't know if you do this, but he's like a battle dancer. We found like, yeah, like these stories. And I remember Lane saying like, this is the best time of my life. And I remember saying to Lane, this was my entire 20s. You know, like when you were getting a PhD and getting married, I was literally just up for anything. I was a bartender who like, whatever, I'll quit my job right now if I have a good enough reason, you know, like, so I remember thinking like, yeah, this is great that Lane's experiencing this for a couple of days, but you know, I'm glad that I had my time to do that because it does shape you and it teaches you a lot about people. It teaches you a lot about like the way the world works. I think we can kind of get caught up in like our little social circles and listening to the news too much. When you get out and travel around the world, you realize we're all essentially the same. We're all just trying to do the best we can for ourselves. We want good things. We want good things for other people. And it kind of just humbles you, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's ironic because you realize how, like you said, we're all the same, but how small the world is. You travel around it, you're like, this is big, but it's kind of small because like it takes a lot of fear out of things. You're like, man, I remember when I was moving to Australia by myself. I was living in New Zealand then before that England, so I'm all mixed up.
All right.
And I was like, oh man, I was packing it. And I remember speaking to my uncle, and my uncle, bit of a nomad, you know, like travel, metal, like just free spirit. And he's like, look, man, he's like, you be sweet. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. He's like, look, you do this. I'm like, yeah, but what about the bank account? I don't know. I'm like procrastinating and all this and worrying. And he goes, put it this way. He goes, once you've done it once, Alex, you can do it anywhere because it's simple. Like it's the same, slightly different, but it's the same thing. And sure enough, he was right. And it's like you, when you move to London, it's like, got a flat, got a job, got some friends. Cool. All right. Like had a good time. Okay. Well, why couldn't I do this in Spain, in France, and this and that? And that's something I was going to ask you actually, Paul, was what did you do for work? Were you just jumping around in your 20s? Were you just working in bars? Was there any specific jobs and any key learnings or memories from that decade that really stick with you?
Yeah. So I think one of the greatest things I did was get a job in the service industry. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I want to punch people in the face when they treat waiters and bartenders poorly because they've never actually had a real fucking job. Like that's something that really, if you want to be not my friend, let's go to a restaurant together and you talk with an attitude to a server. Mm-hmm. So getting that job teaches you a lot of things about, okay, there's no set schedule at the restaurant. You work when it's busy, you stay late, you come in early if you need to. Some days it's going to be slow. You make a great group of friends there who you spend a lot of time with. And once you're good at serving and bartending, you can work anywhere in the world. So I got to move all around and just kind of pop in and say, you know, it also teaches you people skills because you can't walk up to a table and say, what's your order? You got to be like, hey guys, hope you're having a good day today. Is there anything I can interest you in? You learn that people skill, which, you know, I mean, in my career now, it correlates when I go to an expo or a bodybuilding show and someone walks up to me and says, hey, I love your content. How many fitness influencers do you know that are great on social media? They're great on camera. They're great on YouTube. They're great. And then you get them one-on-one and they're just like, they clam up. They're mice. That's not me. I'm literally the same guy I am on the internet. So when you come up to me at an expo, I'm going to ask you how you're doing. I'm going to ask you about your journey, and I'm going to remember you the next time I see you. You know, I truly love meeting people. And so that first job, that first, like, I don't want to call it a career, but could have been, I could have stayed in the restaurant industry. That really taught me a lot of the soft skills that it takes to be a coach, right? Like you have to understand how to relate to people, how to talk to people. You know, and I think a lot of people now are going to college, getting an education, but they're missing that piece. They've never been a personal trainer. They've never had a service job. And honestly, like, you know, I joke about this. The first guy that I hired for Pro Physique, his name's Stephen Bogrand. He was in the master's program when I was there. You know, bright kid, a little bit awkward, which is what I loved about him, but super passionate about fitness. And what really drew me to him was that at the time he was going to school full time, trying to run his own coaching business and working in a restaurant. And I'm like, this guy gets it, man. He's hustling. And when he said, hey, do you ever need help with anything? I was like, yeah, I got a bodybuilding show that I run. I got, you know, I'm putting a gym together at my house. He never asked for a cent. He just showed up. He kept showing up. He kept showing up. And then one day I said, hey, I can't handle this by myself anymore. Do you want to work for me? That was it. So had Steven not had that experience of, working in a restaurant and understanding what life was like his parents didn't pay for him to go to college. He graduated with a master's degree, debt free. And that's because he worked the whole time. He is to this day the heart and soul of Pro Physique, because now when we're looking at hiring somebody, listen, we've hired a couple coaches that on paper, you're like, wow, you've got great education, great experience, but they have no real world experience and they wash out very quickly. They're entitled. They're like, I got a degree, give me my 6 figures. It's not like that. So yeah, that's actually something me and Steven joke around about now, is like, we want people to work for us that have had a job in a restaurant.
Yeah, look, that really resonates with me, Paul, because I often say, like the traveling thing we talked about, and like you, when I came to Australia, I worked a lot of restaurants, I worked a lot of tough jobs. It's just invaluable. Like you said, you are constantly calibrating and sharpening the sword, because you're dealing with all different personalities all day, and you're coming up, and like you said, you've got to be able to handle them, and you're tired, and you got to work all hours. And like you said, you make some great friends and you have a lot of fuck ups as well. But ultimately, it's the fastest way, I think, to get really good with people. Hospitality, retail, hospitality, I think is better because it's more fast moving, and there's a little bit more pressure and I think sort of dynamic to it. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I say that a lot to people. I'm like, look, just go and get a job in a restaurant. And like you said, it will humble you as well. Yeah.
And you're going to make friends. I made some great friends that I'm still friends with 25 years later from restaurant work. Yeah, you just pick up these friends along the way because you guys have something in common. And yeah, so man, working in a restaurant, and you make great money. Like I remember, right out of college, I was making $1,000 a week cash, like not for nothing, but in 1995 or 97, whenever that was a lot of money for me. I was like, whoa, I can, and I worked so much, I didn't spend it.
Well, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Depending on the place you're working in as well. Sometimes you get your lunches, and then, we're locking up, we're having some drinks, and yeah, it all comes full circle. Those tips yeah, they're definitely good. And it was a good little segue there into something else that I wanted to talk about specifically, which is, the educational system now around coaching and whatnot. And again, it's probably different in America, but listening to, yourself talk, Eric talk, a lot of the guys that we speak to in the industry, there's a big disconnect where people are either overqualified, but they're underexperienced, or they're really good with people, but unfortunately they don't have some structure or science to kind of get it across the line. What do you think about bridging that gap, and how do you think we can perhaps bridge it, apart from doing what we're doing now by, having collective of professionals like yourself? We talked about MASS, people who know monthly applications in SRAM Sports, Nutrition Coaching Global. You've got your podcast, many other great ones, but, how do we kind of segue? Because it's almost like you become a personal trainer or you get a sports science degree and then you got to go straight in. But if you don't have a mentor or something like that, it's you sink or swim.
Yeah, I think I always tell people how it worked for me, and I don't know if it's the same, but I mean, if I had to go through the journey again, I would kind of go through the same journey. When I was interested in competing, it wasn't because I wanted to make it a career. People are now going, oh, I want to be an online coach. Seems like a great idea. I get to work on my computer, make money, stay at home, make my own schedule. It's not that glamorous, okay? I'm sitting in my dungeon of an office. I'm in here probably 12, 14 hours a day, right? It turns into a regular job the better you get at it. But when I got into competing, what did I do? I researched who was out there, who was doing things what way. And when I came across Lane, I was like, this guy's getting results. I saw his clients. He's what you said, walking the walk. He's doing what he says. He's actually a flexible dieter who gets shredded and is a natural pro bodybuilder. And, that's what I want to be associated with. And so I reached out to him, and that's the path I would suggest people take. If you want a career, try to hire someone or work with someone in that area. If I wanted to be the best powerlifting coach in the world, I would probably reach out to Joey Flex or, someone in that range that I'm like, okay, I need you to be my coach. Even if I'm not going to be the best in the world, I'm going to learn some skills along the way. They're going to show me why you are the best at what you do. And then fill in the gaps as you need to. So when Lane started suggesting I coach, I realized, I had a master's degree, but it was in business. So I had a good education. I've been reading nutrition books since I was 14. I've always been obsessed with it. So I went back to school. I went and said, okay, let's find, now you have online stuff, but I actually went down the street to the University of South Florida, started taking classes, basic exercise physiology. Guess what? That shit ain't easy. It sure sounds like it's easy, but you got to understand the body on such a deep level. It's so dynamic that I actually had to review older stuff just to understand what we were talking about in exercise physiology. Also, the people I met in that class, some of them are my employees, many of them are my friends. And so it just started this whole new network and cycle of life for me that was so good. So it's just picking up these little pieces along the way, maybe hiring a coach that you really vibe with, maybe putting feelers out, because we have 20 coaches now at Pro Physique. I've never once said, hey, we're hiring coaches here, help wanted. Every single person we've hired has been someone that said, hey, I love working with you. I love this business. If you're ever looking for a coach, let me know. 6 months later, all of our coaches are full. We're getting a lot of inquiries. Guess who I think of? That person. So there's just been a natural progression for me. And the thing you said earlier that really stuck out to me was don't be in a rush. I think that's the scary part for most people is like, oh, I need to be busy as an online coach right away. When I got my first client, I was so scared. I didn't want another client. I was like, I got to do this one client so perfect, right? That one client, then, I went to the show. I remember I was backstage at the show with this client and, he like won teen bodybuilding and novice bodybuilding. And everyone was like, man, that next week I got like 5 emails. Hey, I was at the show. I saw you backstage. Are you taking clients? Sure. I feel like, okay, I did a decent job. And I was always upfront with people. Like, this is my experience. I never tried to like pull the wool over their eyes. Mm-hmm. To this day, I tell people exactly what my experience level is, what I'm comfortable with doing. And it just gradually works. If you rush it, you will make decisions based around finances that will probably put your morals and ethics in question. If you do it the right way, be patient, live below your means, then you can build an empire, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially for a lot of coaches listening now coming into the industry. And as you said, Paul, everyone wants to be online. So a great little, I've almost going to like pull a quote out of that. And it's when you get good at something, it becomes a regular job anyway, or when you get good enough at something. And I think that's really good, because I think a lot of people listening who are coaches or even, business people alike, you sort of think, oh yeah, it'd be great. I'll have my own routine. I'll be able to, sit at home on my laptop or sit by the pool. But then, oh, actually, shit, this is taking up some hours now. And I've really got to think about this. And the people are inquiring. And then, like you said, you've really got to love this, because it's not just, I think maybe perhaps some of the YouTube as well. I love YouTube and it's something that I do myself, but perhaps there are a couple of people or types of coaches who've put the wrong premise, who they don't necessarily coach people anymore. They get paid for views, for collaborations, whatever it is, affiliates, and they're seen to be living the life. And I think a lot of people go, oh, that's what I want, but it's like, yeah, but they're not necessarily in the trenches, like actually getting results for people. So I
always walk the line with YouTube where people say, oh, you're a YouTuber. I said, no, I'm a coach who does YouTube. Mm-hmm. When you become a YouTuber, like some of the big fitness YouTubers, you almost become a caricature of yourself. They start playing a character. They start playing up to the things that people respond to. Mm-hmm. I don't do collabs. I'm not going to talk about other people's, there's this big trend right now on YouTube where people are like, oh, can you do a reaction to this video? No, I don't care about the trendy TikTok stuff. I don't care about the trendy YouTube stuff. I'm sharing my experiences as a coach, show vlogs, how fat loss works, how I get shredded. Like we did our first transformation challenge in 2020. We did another one since. That is very interesting to me. I want to talk about that kind of stuff, but I'm never going to be someone on YouTube who does it for views. And I understand why, people are getting paid off YouTube. I'm certainly making money off YouTube, but that's not my job. My job is to coach. I am going to be a coach. The great benefit of having a 25-person company is, guess what I do all day? I fucking coach. I don't invoice. I don't Instagram. You know, if I make 2-3 posts to Instagram a week, I'm doing really good. You know, I'm not arguing with people on the internet. I'm literally backstage at a bodybuilding show every weekend. And people are like, oh, look at, you're at the show. I go, yeah, it's not an act, man. That's like what I do. What you see on YouTube is who I am. I'm not like, you know, like, hey, look at me. I'm at, you know, sitting on my couch with my laptop doing online clients. So it's my favorite picture in the world. Like, you know, you see this well-known bodybuilder with his laptop sitting by the fire, now accepting online clients. Your ass. That's somebody else answering emails for you. So I'm literally in the trenches. And honestly, like, I don't have to be anymore. I could switch to being a YouTuber. I could switch to being a business builder. I could start being a motivational speaker. People ask me all the time, will you come and speak at our conference for how to build a business? And I say, no, I'm still figuring it out. I'm not comfortable telling people how to build their 6-figure business. I had 5 coaches last year for Pro Physique make more than 6 figures. I'm still not comfortable. So what qualifies these asshats that have never had a successful coaching business to be fit biz pros? That's my biggest pet peeve right now.
Yeah, no, but let's talk about that, Paul, because we did sort of mention that off screen, and that was something I picked out on, again, for those who are aware of the Nutrition Coaching Global Mastermind, which is a phenomenal resource. Shameless plug there. Most of my followers will know about this. Couple of points, though. You're right. That's how you tell. Again, it's leading by example, isn't it? That's how you truly tell if someone loves it. And I think that's what's helped me build my business, is that I live and breathe it. And for me, and I talked about before, and we talked about the traveling and not rushing, which is great. I had to do all that to kind of come back to it, to realize I'm like, oh, this is like what I always gravitate back to. Like, no matter all the jobs I've had, when I'm finished or what I'm doing, I'm like, I'm going to go to the gym now, because like, I want to do that. But what do you mean? It's late. You must be tired. Yeah, but I got to go work out because I just like doing that, right? Like, crazy. Or like just watching what I eat. Like you, I'm just fascinated with nutrition and biology. I think it's great. And that kind of separates the best from the rest. And ultimately the cream rises, right? Like time will tell. And then when people see you at the show, it's like, that's you leading by example. You're like, yeah, I'm excited by this. Like, just because now I'm successful doesn't mean I'm not going to be here. Like, I love this. So
as an example, I have other fitness people reach out to me and say, hey, I'd love to have you come in this weekend and let's do some videos together. That will be great for my channel, right? Sorry, can't do it. I'm at a bodybuilding show that weekend. Like, it's remember what I told you, my North Star is being the best coach in the world. Is going and getting on somebody else's YouTube going to make me a better coach? No, being at the show is. And so I still live by that. So that's the focus.
Yeah, no, for sure. I respect that, Paul. I think that's great. With what you said about, and this is kind of a second part to what we're talking about with bridging the gap with the educational system, is creating an awareness for other coaches as well about a lot of people online. And, with social media these days, and we've touched on this a little bit, there's just so much information. And I feel that is one of my roles as a coach, to disseminate and give people critical thinking skills to avoid and be able to identify with information when it's there and go, actually, that is bullshit. And I don't have to worry about that. Oh man, it's so simple. I can just focus on these things rather than taking this supplement at this time, or having to find this magic exercise, or bloody doing all these booty band bullshit. It's like, come on, like it's really not that hard. But the irony is, people go, well, hang on, these coaches are doing it and they're getting results and this, that, and the other. And so, and these guys have got a bigger following, so they must be right. And it's like, well, not quite true. So I almost feel sometimes it's a frustrating battle. But as you said, how do you combat that? I guess you probably combat it by just doing you, I guess, and leading by example. But
yeah, I mean, as much as those things frustrate me, I'm playing the long game, and I'm here for a long time, not a good time, right? I'm here to have impact on my clients every single week, which is going to lead to decades of success. Whereas I think some of the business models I see some of these coaches doing is they're buying followers on Instagram, right? They're photoshopping their pictures or their clients' pictures. You saw the guy, what was his name a couple of years ago, Devin Physique. He basically had built an empire around just nonsense. And then you got found out, right? So a lot of the people.
Hang on, quickly. Was that no? Because this is funny. Was that Beast Bodybuilding?
No, his name was Devin Physique. He was a Shreds. I think it was Shreds was the supplement company. Cuts? No, Shreds.
Yeah, that's right.
And a young lady that worked for him actually made a YouTube video because he had, several hundred clients paying him to be their coach. Meanwhile, she was the coach.
Just a quick one, guys, before we carry on with the podcast. For any of you who are interested in taking your health and physique to the next level and you want to remove the guesswork, you're not quite getting the progress that you want, you're not seeing what you want to see in the mirror, and you're not feeling like you're really moving in the right direction, then click the link in the bio below, the apply button, where you can contact me. We can organize a free consultation, no obligation, and discover whether it's a good fit as coach and client. All right, back to it.
Yeah, this was probably 3-4 years ago. It was epic. And then that's when they started taking his pictures in real life and then showing the photoshops. So he was making his physique look more impressive than it was, and he had an impressive physique, but it was like this whole, let's just build up a business around, being fake, signing up people for coaching. He wasn't actually doing the coaching. They're walking up to them at Expo thinking they're meeting their coach, and he has no idea who they are. Those kind of things. So whenever I see somebody having a ton of success and I'm thinking to myself, like, well, they're probably not doing it the right way, it's not going to last. It's not going to last. The one thing I am not in a rush to do is be kind of a huge success, because it makes you a target. So I want to do things the right way, build up my foundation of clients the right way. And those people have my back. They are my family. They're my people. I don't need, honestly, the one thing I often sometimes worry about is overshadowing my clients. The focus should not be on me when I have a competitor at a show. So if I'm backstage with a client at a show and I'm like, hey, this is, someone walks up and they're like, Paul, can I get a picture? I go, listen, I really love that you asked me, but let me wait till prejudging's over, because I'm doing my job right now. And they're like, oh, you're right. So if I was more focused on being Insta famous, I would be like, yeah, sorry, Sarah, I got to take a picture. What? Let me tag you. No, I don't do that. Like and I think I also benefit from being around before the internet. Like, old guy joke, but literally I grew up, went through college the first time. There was no internet. I didn't have email until like 1998 or 1999. And even then it was just hacking, like terrible internet back then. So I know what real life is like. And I know that what you see on Instagram, most of the time when people are posting inspirational quotes, it's because they themselves need to hear it, not for other people. Me and my wife, I don't tell her happy birthday on Instagram. I tell her to her fucking face. Like, part of that stuff, I get it because it's a new generation of kids, and I don't want to sound like the grumpy guy that's like, oh, when I was a kid, we did it this way. But there needs to be a level of sincerity to what you're putting on the internet, or I just see right through it. I just go, that's for show. You know how many times I've seen people like get in an argument, husbands and wives, and then go make a nice post on Instagram, and I'm like, you two hate each other right now, but you're trying to put on a facade, right? So yeah, the internet can be a bad thing, but I think it's a short-term thing. Because how many times have you seen people be like, I'm so happy, and then they make a post that says like, okay, I got to be real with you guys, I've been depressed for the last 2 years. Like, what are you talking about? I thought you were in the Maldives at the beach. Yeah, like, now you're depressed? I don't understand. So yeah.
And then you get put on a pedestal because you speak freely, right? Yeah. So one of my friends said to me lately, we're having a conversation. Something happened at the Olympics where, I don't know, said athlete didn't do well, and then they started talking about mental health, and it was literally, no, you just fucked up, and you just didn't have the discipline, and you because you didn't win, you had all these titles, and you didn't win this year, and they were like, oh, mental health, and then all of a sudden people are like putting them on a pedestal, like, oh yeah, but we have to be. It's like, man, you can't say shit anymore. I mean, like, what happened to just like, you know what, fuck, I wasn't good enough, need to sort my shit out, let's get back into it. But oh no. People are marrying lampshades now, Paul, and apparently that's all right. So,
I mean, listen, not to diminish mental health, it is a very real thing. It is something that obviously needs to be discussed. But yeah, I think, things get overused, and then after a while you realize like, okay,
I
it
think,
all comes back to center at some point.
well, that's it. I mean, like you said, it is. And I just think people are taking the piss though, when people are using it as a vice. And it's like crying wolf. It's like, yeah, mental health is a thing. And so are all these other things, and, gay and lesbian. And that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. But people are using it now as leverage. And it's like, hang on a minute. Like, no, just because you're indifferent or you associate with a certain category, like I'm a vegan, respect me. It's like, yeah, well, that's fine, but that doesn't give you special rights. And I don't think we should, and everyone should be respectful. But again, we're living in a world now where almost, does it have to get worse before it gets better? And like you said, Paul, being around before a lot of this social media perhaps is what grounds you and helps you kind of calibrate and see through it a lot, because you don't even entertain it. You don't play those games. It's easy, where a lot of the younger folk, I think, are so
that's where their identity is tied to. Like,
yeah,
young people, their identity is tied to, like, if they make a post, how many comments and likes do they get? Whereas if I make a post, my friends are like, you're a fucking tool, mate. You fucking idiot. Why'd you make that? Like my friends keep it real with me. If I do something stupid, if I wear a shirt with a funny collar, I hear about it from them. I don't think a lot of people have actual friends that do that shit.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's good. And you need people like that because they keep you grounded.
Oh my gosh. Like the podcast, the YouTube, the Instagram, that's great. But my wife always says to me, like, because sometimes she'll come to an event and she'll see me like meeting people, and she's like, on the drive home, she's like, you still got to take out the trash and do the dishes tonight, right? And I'm like, yeah, like, of course, like that's, yeah. So I'm not immune to like what's going on, but it just hasn't affected me as much as I think. And for good reason. Like, I don't know what it would be like to grow up right now. Like, my kids are watching YouTube at 3 years old. That's different. I grew up, I could only watch my cartoons on Saturday morning from 10 to 12. That was all the time they were on. If my ass wasn't up to watch TV at that time, I didn't get to watch cartoons that Saturday. Now my kids are like, Dad, I want to watch the dinosaur cartoon with Blippi. And I'm like, okay, go to YouTube, search. They get to watch whatever they want, whenever they want, right? So it's just they're growing up in a different era. So I'm trying to be sensitive to that, but I'm going to keep them grounded, and I'm going to keep myself grounded. And, that's the great thing about the tough thing with COVID was we didn't get to go meet people. And when you get to go to fitness expos and travel around the world, you get to find out who's real, who's in your corner, who's your people. Because it's very hard to tell on the internet.
Oh yeah, that's it. I mean, first of all, I think with the kids, it's great about keeping them grounded. I mean, I've not got kids yet, and maybe I'm a bit of an old soul. A lot of my friends are older, but I often ask them.
I was 38, don't rush. I was 38 before I had my first child.
Mate, that's bang on. It's exactly what I'm doing, because I'm listening to people like you with experience and knowledge, and I'd rather have something authentic and real than just rush around and, fit and whatever it is, a societal pressure that means, oh, you've got to, like you said, get the house, and the kids, it's like, no, you do your thing, you create your own world, and it will happen organically. Yeah. And again, I'm young, I'm in no rush. I want to keep building my business and helping people. But on that kind of note, I think, yeah, it's really interesting. When I remember I was a bit disheartened. I used to follow a lot of people, I was young. I was like, yeah, man. And I went to these fitness expos, and I used to actually play dumb, because like you, I'm just a closet nerd. So I'd always be reading up. And again, I found good knowledge like Eric, and I'd meet these fitness people. And one, I was like, you do not look like you do on Instagram. Right. And then two, they'd either be really rude or arrogant. Not all of them, by the way. There's some good people, but you very quickly, because I'm a people's person, you very quickly disseminate who is. And then I'd speak to them, and they didn't. And like, no disrespect, I'm like, you don't know shit about nutrition, like some real top people. And then they were like training, and there's like, oh, is this the way? This is the new age of training. I'm sitting there looking at my mate going, this is all horseshit. These guys don't have a fucking clue, mate. How do I know or understand nutrition fundamentals and training progression and physiology more than these guys? And that's when it hit me. I'm like, Alex, it's not about what you perceive on social media. And when you get in front of people, you can actually very quickly, and some of them, there are a few that were humble, and they were definitely in sort of, I guess if you want to call it, more of mindset or way of thinking. But yeah, that was a bit of a rude awakening for me. And it left me really pondering and thinking after I met them. So be your own hero, I think.
Yeah, well, there's a quote that says, you know, be careful when you meet your heroes because they might ruin the illusion. But then there's other cases where it's the opposite, where you meet someone that you don't know much about, and you're like, wow, this person exceeded my expectations. So, I
Yes.
mean, I think ultimately, to really be successful, you have to be good in person. You have to be able to go stand in front of a group of people, meet people. When I look at the most successful people in our industry, people like, Rob and Daniel and Bailey, because I remember when they just started off as Flagner Fail and started off making clothes, and now they have like their whole little empire. And I'm like, if you've ever met them, they will literally talk to you for an hour. Like, they're the most genuine, down to earth people that are hustlers, and they'll just share their journey. And those are the success stories that I try to model myself after, not the people that I see that, on Instagram, they're driving out and getting in their Ferrari, and then they drive home and they sit down and they go, now taking online clients. It's like, no, I saw somebody made a post yesterday about, being a coach. Like, we barely, some days I don't even fucking shower, dude, because I get home so late. And I got to do stuff with the kids and then put them to bed. And then I got to work a little bit. And then I pass out while I'm working. And then next thing you know, it's 5:30 in the morning. I got to be back at the gym. Like, to me, that's work. That's hustle. The second I stop and try to make it, like, would it make me a better coach if you guys saw my Ferrari? I don't have one, by the way, but I always think that, like, no, like, I wouldn't even want to flex like that. If I see somebody doing that stuff, I think, why are you doing that? Like, that's where my brain goes. That's an intentional thing to try to show off, because you're trying to attract a certain group of people that are looking for shortcuts. When people come and they're like, oh, I want to do what you do, I go, you think you do? Come spend a day with me. Get up at 5:30, get home at 6, stay with the kids till 9, work another hour or two and start over again. And then get on a flight every Thursday to a different city. Like, like, not for nothing, I fucking love my job, but the job description, it's not what people think. It's not, building your own business, as it's not a 40-hour a week job. If you're lucky, it's 80, might be 100. And then you got the stress on top of it, when one client drops off and you're like, that's it, that's the end, my business is over. Like, there's these ebbs and flows, and it seems like every victory is followed by a small defeat, and then hopefully a bigger victory and another defeat. And it's just a constant, like, evolution. And that's the scary part for me with the people that are trying to start their own businesses. They don't respect that part of it. They think it's all rise. It's not.
Yeah, it's good. And this is exactly why I love having conversations like this, Paul, because it's real. And that's why it's called raw knowledge, because I'm constantly after speaking to people who just tell it as it is, and it's not about, making it, we're not saying, oh, it's, all, hard and grind, but ultimately nothing good comes easy. It takes discipline, it takes dedication, all of these things, whatever words you want to use. And I think when people, like you said, or people go, oh, I want to do what you do. And I said, look, what you want to do is the thing that gets you out of bed every morning. And that when you hate it, you still want to do it, because that is the thing that you're going to stick with. Because if you don't love it when you hate it, and I always joke with my clients, and they say, like, lunges, and I'm like, lunges, and they're like, yeah, they're like, does anyone like lunges? And I'm like, look, man, it's a love-hate relationship. And that's kind of like training. I'm like, sometimes you love it, sometimes you hate it, but man, in the end, you just, they're good for you,
Yeah.
So there is that, and people need to hear it. People need to understand. And I think if more people, they remove the minutia, like you said, and we've stumbled across my pet hate here, Paul, as well. Full disclosure, I love cars, I love bikes, and I always joke, I have 3 distractions: cars, bikes, and women. And I was fortunate enough in the younger days, I used to race cars. I love that. And I would one day love one of those supercars, but I do not believe that. I always say to my friends, I said, look, if you ever see me post that post, literally, oh yeah,
go on. Keep going. I'm gonna show you something.
I'm like, just slap me, because I think there's something really humbly beautiful about just having those things, and only your friends or the people that need to know. No, like, I'm not going to post my kid with like,
Right.
he's 3 weeks old, or I just bought a house, stood in front of it, or I used to drive this car. Now I'm a coach and I drive this car. No, bullshit, man. Like, that's not what I'm about.
So you won't really understand because you guys, well, I guess you do have baseball over there, but you don't watch. But since I was a kid, I played baseball, and so this is something that this is my car. This is my like motorcycle fancy stuff. These are baseball cards that have been graded by a company called PSA. So they basically, you get the card, you send it off, and they grade it. So, you know, it makes it more valuable because it's basically been authenticated and it said like, this is a 10. So this is the current, you know, most popular player in baseball, Fernando Tatis. This is what I like to do in my free time. I love collecting baseball cards, right? So that's I've got a thing here on the wall. So yeah, like I, you know, if cars were my thing, believe me, I'd be proud of it. I'd have the Ferrari outside. But you know, I drive 4 miles a day, so it'd be kind of a waste of a nice car. So, but you got to have that escapism, right? You can't, you know, like, listen, you know, we can all be like, you know, the hustle porn thing became very popular with Gary, where like all it is hustle. No, you have escapism too. You have to find things that you enjoy. But, you know, it just, like my buddy George said to me once, he goes, how do you find time to do it all? How do you find time to do YouTube, to be a coach, to, you know, be with your kids? And I'm like, you just cut out all the bullshit. I don't go Tuesday night to have wings with the boys anymore. I'm sorry, but as much as I love my boys, you know, you got your priorities. And when you put your priorities in place, we've all got the same 24 hours in the day. I do my 24 hours. I make the most of every single one of them, you know? So yeah.
I think most people are just wasted on these things. Yeah. You know, it rules them, you know, whether it's the computer or the phone, they just get up and they're like, bang, I have no time. I'm like, you do have time. You just waste a lot. You just invent shit to do.
Yeah.
Where really, like you said, Paul, you cut out the waste and you get real with yourself and you go, look, this thing makes shit happen. Like, what's really important? What's the things that's going to get me closer to where I want to go? And you said before, a key thing, the North Star. And I like that phrase because I think it's good to use that as an example. And I say to people as well, like, if you have this like purpose, this North Star, you can always ask yourself when you get stuck or when you're not sure, because hell, we all get those times where we question shit. Or like you said, you know, these things our clients leave or whatever, and you're like, oh, fuck. You come back to that and you go, well, that's what keeps me moving in the right direction. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And guess what? It's so easy, because then you go, no, that's not what I need to do. That's what I need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. But before we get onto some tail end questions, Paul, there's two contrasting questions I wanted to ask, and feel free to just pick out a few examples or whatever comes to mind. But what are some of the biggest mistakes you've made versus the biggest wins? And like, what did you learn from these experiences? Or you could call them learning curves, whatever you like to phrase it as.
Yeah, I think, you know, early on, my biggest mistakes were I would trust too much that the kind of my mentor knew everything. You know, I bought into everything that Lane was talking about and doing at the time. And I thought, oh, that's the way it's done. And if anyone was doing things differently, I would say they were the bad guys and we were the good guys. Now I realize there's no such thing, because if they're successful, there's a reason. And so instead of looking at it as good and bad, I look at it as I'm successful doing it this way. They're successful doing it that way. And what that allows me to do is go, maybe there's something over there that I could use. You know, so for example, you know, when I came up, you know, as a flexible dieter, if your coach gave you a meal plan, that was a bad coach. Now I don't think that way anymore. Now I think flexible dieting should be about creating a sustainable approach, hitting your macros, but giving someone a meal plan is helping them understand what their meals could look like, right? So I still think that flexible dieting and you know, tracking macros is the best way to be successful long term. But I also think there's value in doing something like having a meal plan. We actually have a registered dietitian on staff that helps with meal plans and stuff like that. So, you know, just little things like that, not looking at the world through a peephole and saying we are right, you are wrong, but going, you know, this company, while they do things differently than us, they're really successful. And why is that? Well, although they give out shit plans, they have a great community. What if we built a great community? What builds communities? Events. Let's have some events. So you start to see what's building other people's successes. Instead of looking at everything as black and white, you just look at people that are successful. Like you said, success leaves clues. What has helped them be successful? And that's what I try to do now. Instead of talking down or judging other companies as good or bad, I just say like, okay, I do it this way and I'm happy doing it my way. I wonder what I could learn from them. And that's really changed the ego on me. Like, I know, not for nothing, but I'm a fucking good coach. And I can't even tell you the last time someone reached out to me and said, hey, could you help me peak somebody? Could you help me with my prep coaching? I'd love to help people. That's one of the things I love to do. But it's almost like ego, like this is how we peak people. This is the way it's done. No, I talked to Eric Helms, Lane Norton, Dr. Joe, everyone that I knew that was good at peaking people, Cliff Wilson. And I looked at all different approaches. I found my different ways. I didn't just stick my guns to saying this is the way that works. That's horseshit. If you remove your ego and just look at it as information, you can actually start making really good decisions. And so that's the biggest, regret I have, is that I didn't start that earlier. I took things for face value very early on, and it took me a few years to go, maybe that's not the best way to do it.
Oh, that's good. That's very insightful. And I think, like you said, you're just putting that to one side, and probably a lot of people can resonate. I know I can. You can get so hell bent on, for me a while ago, all of the misdemeanors out there, and you look at the people who are supposedly doing it wrong, and it's all this hate, but it's wasted energy. It's like, hang on, like you said, first of all, they must be doing something right, but then also just lowering your guard and asking and reaching out. And hey, man, if someone says no, well, hey, that's fine. Like, at least you asked, and maybe you can reach out at another time. But there's always something to learn, I think, from people. Take it with a pinch of salt sometimes, but yes, I think asking people who are emulating the success and have it as well, especially when you want to learn something. Yeah. It's a simple concept most people overlook. It's like, hey, like you with guitar, I want to play guitar well. I could fuck around on it and do it myself, or I could actually invest time, money, or resources into someone who obviously knows how to play well, and I could have a better experience and fast forward it and be humble and be like, maybe I ask my friends who are a little bit better than me or something like that. But just a basic example.
Yep, same thing happened. I hired a guitar teacher, and I realized very quickly I didn't need a guitar teacher. I just need to fucking practice more. Like, so you got to go through the experiences and figure things out on your own. And, sometimes, hiring a coach helps you figure out where your issues are, where you need to improve, and then you go work on them. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And contrasting that, any specific accolades apart from the ones that you've already mentioned, Paul, that have great deep meaning to you, or perhaps were like a bit of a checkpoint or a marker, a chapter, if you will, in the chronicle of Pro Physique?
For me, so because I'm a coach, like there are certain tangible things that you can achieve as a coach for your clients, right? So the current, when I first started coaching, I wanted to coach a natural bodybuilding world champion. I've done that multiple times now. Then I thought it'd be really cool if I could get my clients IFBB pro cards. Done that lots of times. Then I thought it'd be cool if I could get my clients on the Olympia stage, and I've done that. So now the next one is to win an Olympia title. May never happen, but that's kind of like guiding me, towards like, I like those little feathers in my cap. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's always a wonderful feeling as well when you can help someone achieve something quite
well. Just like getting a degree kind of separates you from your peers. You get a bachelor's degree, you get a master's degree. If you get a freaking PhD, forget it, you're on your own planet. Same thing in coaching. Like, there's not going to be a lot of coaches backstage at the Olympia this year. I will be one of them, right? There's not a lot of coaches in the world that get to say like they're going to the Olympia with a client. So, and I don't, but those are the things that, like, sometimes I look around and go, wow, I've done some good stuff. Like, if I think back to where I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like if you'd have said, this is where you'll be, I probably would have like kicked you in the nuts and said, you're full of shit. Like, there's no way that'll happen, but it's just like putting little pieces on top of little pieces over time. And before you know it, you look back and you go, holy shit, I've built like the Great Wall of China back here to get where I'm at. But if you look at it from the when you're starting and think this is what I've got to build, you probably don't even start because it seems so daunting.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy, that one as well. And it's just about, like we were talking about, the consistency as well, but it can be very overfacing, seeing it really big. But a question, I think this is going to be really good. I know I'm interested to get your perspective on this, Paul. What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are? And again, I know there's a lot, so you may have to summarize, but about being a coach in the trenches and actually, programming for, athletes now that you're working with at a very high level. And what I mean by this is something that I have learned is that, the coaching and the programming is not that overcomplicated. I had Alberto Nunez on about a month ago, and we were talking about, for example, he would deliver a program and the client would be like, this is it. Like, this is top level shit. And he's like, well, see, you wouldn't have done this yourself. And he's like, let me run you through it. And then you'll see it's about, it's the intensity behind it. It's all the other nuances.
Yeah.
So just use that as an example. But what do you think the misconceptions are? Like, again, drop the veil. There's no secrets. When programming for people, do you find that a lot of people come, or a lot of coaches think you have to do all this fancy nonsense shite? Yeah. What are the misconceptions?
Well, I think the most important thing is that the client is excited about training. So you do have to have some novelty to your programming. We've said they're not inventing new exercises. Brett probably was the last one with the barbell hip thrust, which has been obviously a huge part of my business as a bikini coach. I remember when I started coaching bikini, all these girls were like, oh yeah, I want to do hip thrusts. I'm like, what are you talking about? So then, I've become very good friends with Brett over the years because our careers kind of coincided with each other. He invents the hip thrust. I become a bikini coach. Bikini takes over the world. It is the largest fitness competition category in the world, probably by double of any other, right? It just so happened to be that way. And I think, obviously Alberto is somebody that I have great respect for. We come from the same, we both worked under Lane. He started with 3D Muscle Journey when I started Pro Physique, and he's someone that I still, last year I ran into him at an airport and we sat down and talked for an hour, I just go way back. We just go back to the message forums. Like, he was one of the first people I met on the internet. What was his name on bodybuilding.com? I forget. But the point being is that overcomplicating training, sometimes someone will say like, this isn't enough volume. And I'll go, okay, here's a little more volume. And then they go, that's too much volume. And I go, okay, start with the low volume. Let me build you up. But part of it is also being willing to discuss these things with your clients. You can't say like, this is how it is, or get lost. I try to draw people in and explain things. And this is what YouTube videos are for. I send all my clients videos, to explain what we're doing. And so there is a lot of value in that. And I think a lot gets lost in the, like, I'm the coach, you're the client, you should just listen. No, I go back to my serving days. I'm the server. I want you to buy this steak and margarita. Here's why. You have to learn how to explain yourself in a way that makes you approachable, makes people appreciate you. But I'll tell you the biggest misconception in all of coaching is that the coach makes the client great. That's fucking false. The genetics and the hard work of that person is what makes them great. Most clients are going to be great with or without you. And I think this is what I always try to remember. My clients, my job is to make them the best that they can be, but they're going to succeed with or without me. They're dedicated. They're eventually going to find their way to the right coach, the right platform. I just need to make sure that I'm providing that. And I think, a lot of people on the internet will get up and say, look at my clients. They're all so great because of me. And I go, not so fast. Those are great people already. You're just giving them a platform. So, respect that genetics is going to drive most things. We've all seen the genetic anomalies that you give them a workout of 3 sets of 10 and they put on 10 pounds of muscle. And you're like, what? And you have had a client for 5 years that's been on every type of periodization platform, every type of undulating periodization, and they've barely been able to make any progress, right? Was one program better than the other? No, the athlete was better, right? So understanding that most of the progress is going to be related to the person that's performing it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even actually that last point, Paul, was good too, because for people listening intently, you're right. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. Some people are just more predisposed, high responders, low responders, whatever you want to call it, to put on muscle mass. And ultimately, I really respect that last bit too, because a lot of people always, like, your clients are like, no, Paul, like, you're, man, like, without you, I'd be nothing. And you're like, bullshit. Like, don't get me wrong, I've played my part, but I have purely facilitated. Like, you have done the work, you have turned up. Like, do not rob yourself of the the ownership that you have taken to make this happen. Maybe I just helped you realize some of it and I provide a roadmap for people. I want to create an environment where I empower people to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of what I do now is psychology. It's vision. It's not necessarily like, here's our workouts, here's our macros. It's like, what is your end goal? You want to be on the Olympia stage. Okay, it starts with, we got to go to the right regional shows, get in front of the right judges before we go to the national shows. Got to go to the right pro shows, pro qualifier. Like, that's a lot of what I do now. It's like mentoring athletes on their journey of how to succeed. It's not just like, when I first started coaching online, I literally just sent people their plans and they went to the shows by themselves. And, I would get a message, oh, I won or I lost. And if they won, I'd say, great, I'm a great coach. If they lost, they'd say, oh, probably the judging was bad or something. I don't say that anymore. If you're not at the show, you don't judge the show. You weren't there. And when you're at the shows, you realize what makes people stand out on stage. And so that's what made me a better coach, was going to the shows and seeing my clients not succeed and seeing someone else better and going, I got to make sure my client looks like that next time. And now I know what to look for in pictures, in update pictures. I know the look that people have before they turn pro, before they win, before they go to the Olympia. Do we have that in these pictures? No, then we got to keep working, right? So that's it all comes back to that. Whatever it is that you're trying to do as a coach, be there. If you want to be the best powerlifting coach, CrossFit coach, bodybuilding coach, F45 coach, be there. Like, you have to be at the events. You have to be in the arena to see what is being rewarded. You cannot be an internet coach. I've tried to remove the word internet from what I do. I'm not an online coach. I'm a coach who works through digital media.
Yeah, that's probably a fantastic way to summarize some of this conversation, Paul, because again, people just want to be online coaches and be great, but it's like saying, I am going to be this sprinter. It's like, you don't even know how to walk yet, buddy. And people don't want to hear it, but they need to. And don't get me wrong, maybe they do become good online coaches because they can post nice pictures and they have great followings. But ultimately, I think there's something powerful about having the both. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? Yes, you may have built an online following and you can, like you said, coach people via online mediums. But, and you guys have talked about this on Nutrition Coaching Global and many of the platforms, where it's like, man, you got to get hands on, man. Like, if you want to know how to drive the car, like, you can't just read a book and be a good driver. Like, you have to do it. You have to get your hands on the wheel.
Did you see the movie Ford versus Ferrari with Matt Damon?
What was that?
Did you see the movie? It was called Ford versus Ferrari. It had Matt Damon played Carroll Shelby.
I don't think I have, actually, no.
There's a really cool scene, and it reminds me of what you just said. So in the scene, Matt Damon, they're trying to build the fastest car in the world, the GT40, to beat the Ferrari at the Le Mans, right? So the owner of Ford comes downstairs and says, like, no, I'm picking the driver. The guy that's going to drive this car is the guy I pick, not the guy you pick. And Carroll Shelby's like, I don't think you understand what this car does, what this car represents. He's like, I don't care. I'm the boss. So they actually get him in the car, and then Carroll Shelby just scares the shit out of him, whipping corners at 200 miles an hour, parks the car, and the guy gets out about to vomit and says, like, holy shit. He's like, exactly. You can't put somebody in this car that doesn't know how to drive it. And he basically defaults and says, okay, you pick the driver. So if you're not in the arena, here's what I'll say, and it correlates a lot to what I do, is like, there's a lot of coaches that do a really good job online and they get their clients to the shows. But guess what happens when they see me backstage with my clients?
Yeah, they want to probably train with you.
And that's not why I go to shows. I intentionally avoid those conversations because I don't want to be seen as somebody that poaches clients. That's another pet peeve of mine. Mm-hmm. But I'm nice. I am genuinely there with my clients. And I'm going to get a direct message next week when that coach wasn't available on show day. It's just the natural progression. And maybe some people don't want that. I've actually had people reach out to me like, hey, I have this great client. I've taken her as far as I can. Can you take her to the Olympia or whatever? Because I don't want that. I have my thing here. it's not for everybody, but yeah, you have to be in the moment, in the trenches to actually be the best possible coach.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think I always come back to that leading by example.
Yeah.
I think you've got to. And that's just maybe like your word is your bond, and it's that level of authenticity and as you said, Paul, earlier, sincerity. That you and look and that kind of says it all, because you don't have to be there now. It's not like, oh, now Paul still needs to be there. It's like, no, he doesn't need to be there, and he's still there. Okay, he's obviously obsessed with this shit. He loves it. That's great.
I got nervous the other day for novice bikini was walking out. I'm like, why am I freaking nervous? I'm going to the Olympia this year. Novice bikini at a local show does not make me nervous. It's like I just get excited to see my girls on stage. Yeah, my guys too.
It's good. And if you don't, I would say as well, get nervous. I'm like, good, means you care. If you don't get nervous, you don't.
The day I go to a show and I'm just having a beer and watching, that's probably when I'm time to stop coming.
Yeah, pretty much, my friend, pretty much. Before we sign off, I'd like to ask some rapid fire questions. They're a bit fun, a bit lighthearted. Before my last one. So whatever comes to mind first. The first one would be, if you could choose a superpower and you can make it up if you want, what would it be and why?
I think it would be to teleport.
Yeah, that's a top one, especially now.
Yeah, if I could just be like Melbourne, Australia, boom.
Oh, New York, boom. We could have done this podcast live, Paul. Would have been brilliant.
Yeah, well, just think about the time that I spend going to an airport, getting on a plane, and flying somewhere. I could just be there. So literally, time is my most valuable asset, and if I could just save time, that'd be huge.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's a good one. If you could invite 3 people to dinner, dead or alive, off the top of your head, because it will change as you think about it, who would you get?
Genghis Khan, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and The Rock.
Right. Yeah, I see The Rock is behind you as well for people watching on YouTube. Yeah. Dude, literally, when you first put the camera on, before it freaked me out, I thought, oh, there's some dude behind Paul.
Get out of the way, you can probably see it better.
Yeah, there he is.
By the way, all those boxes, those are baseball cards, dude.
Jesus, man. That's a lot of baseball cards, man.
Oh, and that's this wall and that one. Yeah, don't ever come to my office.
There you go. Hey, well, you got your thing, man. But I do understand that's definitely a big, it's a collective, right?
I still got my trophies over here too. Like, we got this office is literally a man cave. Like,
oh, you got to have that space. But I was literally, when you turned on the light, I was like, oh shit, there's someone behind Paul. I better tell him. Like, do you know there's a dude behind you, Paul?
When I first got that, I think someone got it for me for Christmas last year. I had it in my office, and I'd come into work in the morning and open the door and be like, oh fuck, like so many, like for like weeks straight, I'd have that moment of like, there's someone in my office.
I was actually going to ask. I'm glad, because it would freak me the fuck out the first time, because it looks literally like a dude's there.
Now, if someone's in my office, I'm fucked, because I'm so conditioned to just someone being there that if it's a real person, I wouldn't even notice for like 10 seconds.
This is true. This is very true. A food-related question.
Genghis Khan, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and The Rock. Those are 3 very intriguing people to me.
Yeah. Out of interest, though, apart from the obvious why, I mean, they're all very strong characters.
Well, Genghis Khan is someone I became very interested in when I started learning about his methods, how he was basically, I often describe him to Dr. Joe. Me and Dr. Joe have a lot of talks about Genghis Khan. I describe him as the greatest human that's ever lived. And although he was at the time, known for doing terrible things and kind of ruling Asia, he was also very clever in that he would, when he was trying to capture a culture, he would actually go capture their leaders and integrate them into his society and learn their best traits. So he was just very clever and very driven. And I don't know, I don't know enough about him. I'm always just been intrigued by him. So I think it would be cool. Like, I've seen a few documentaries, but I know there's a lot missing. Arnold is just obvious. I've read all his books. He's probably had the greatest influence on my life outside of my dad. And my dad's not there because I can go see him anytime I want. And then The Rock, I've had the good fortune of actually meeting The Rock. Like back when he was a wrestler, we trained at the same gym in South Florida. Used to see him there occasionally. We'd sat down. I'd had a few words with him before. He was well known as a wrestler, but he wasn't the global icon that he is now. So he was very approachable. But again, you don't know somebody until you know them. But I've known enough people that know him to say he's genuinely, like you see, humble, hardworking, loves just giving back and is just grateful for everything. He just seems like the epitome. I mean, he's fucking jacked. He's obviously wakes up every day in the iron paradise and crushes it. And, you know, there's something to be said for that. Like he keeps his foundation around his gym, his family, and just continues to just crush life. So like, I don't know, those people all have that aspiration to just kind of keep pushing the envelope. And I think that's what draws me to them.
Yeah, they are all tremendously inspirational characters. I think Joe has doesn't he have Dr. Joe a master's in philosophy as well or something?
I know he got one in creative writing recently. He's always going back to school. He's another one. If he was dead, he'd be on the list. But
I was gonna say, fuck, he's got that many. I can't keep up.
I think he's got 2 PhDs, 3 masters, something like that. And I think he was working on a PhD in creative writing. I don't know. So
yeah.
I often ask him, I go, Dr. Joe, why do you keep going? And, you know, I said, what was your childhood like? And he grew up very poor. Like, and, you know, I think early on it was just his way of creating security. But through that, he found what his passion was. His passion is learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
His passion is not coaching. You know, he was great at coaching. But when I see him now, I say, you know, he still coaches, but it's not his absolute passion in life. And he's like, you know, I never did what you're doing. I didn't go to shows every single weekend. You know, I went to the World Championships and I'm like, no, I'm obsessed. If I didn't have kids, I would literally just live on the road. I wouldn't even have a house. I would just go to a different city every week. That's the dream for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. No, well, he certainly articulates himself very well, that's for sure. And I can concur. I've been fortunate enough to meet Dwayne The Rock. He is super down to earth, man. He actually was there when I pulled my 180 deadlift PB back in the day. And the reason why, so because I've got to context that now. So one of my passions is acting. I'm very animated, hence why YouTube and podcasts go so well for people who can't tell. Yeah, I can talk a glass eye of sleep. So when I was sort of doing sort of auditions, I got an extra role in San Andreas, and he was in the Gold Coast area. Now, I didn't know he would turn up, and at the time, I was training at World Gym. And he was in there, and people sort of cottoned on, and they thought, "Oh, we'll all go to World Gym." But what he did was obviously he'd just turn up at random times because people were starting to go, "Oh, The Rock's going to be there at this time." And yeah, and anyway, we stood there with these bouncers and his bodyguards, and I said, "Look, lads," I said, "this is going to look real bad, but I just want to set a video up here. I'm not trying to film Dwayne, but I've got a PB," and they were like, "No, it's fine." And I remember pulling it, and he was stood there because he was doing like standing calf raises, and I pulled it up, put it down, and he was looked at me and he's like, "Just give me the nod." He's like, "Pretty good." And I was like, "Yep, sweet." And then a couple of like a month or so later, I was on set as an extra, and yeah, we got to chat to him. And I mean, it wasn't a super long time, but we all kind of said, because I met some really good friends on that set who I'm still friends with now, like you said before. He was just super like jokey, like down to earth, humble, and that's inspiring when you see someone that, you know, has that level of success. And I think he's now like one of the most celebrated icons in the world, I believe, like with his branding, with his acting, with his wrestling, to still be so grounded. And again, probably because of his upbringing, very inspirational.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the most followed person on Instagram, which that's probably the greatest, you know, indication of who's most famous person on the planet. I think he might be the most famous person on the planet outside of like somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo or somebody, you know.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. That was the statistic I was trying to bring up. I think you're bang on there. The last one, quick fire for the last question I ask everyone is, if you could have like a viral, and I know this is not really you, but a message that would go out and it would be on all social medias, completely free, but everyone would get it. It'd be on Instagram, Facebook. I don't know how many there are these days. Snapchat. Now everyone's on TikTok. And it was just either a picture or a blurb. What message would you want everyone to see on their devices if you could get just something out?
You know, the kind of thought or phrase that changed my life was when I was in maybe my early 30s. And it occurred to me that every good thing and every bad thing that had ever happened to me was my fault or responsibility. And that made me change the way I treated people and the way I treated myself. So it would, I don't know how to phrase it, but it would definitely be something along the lines of like, hey, you know, everything that's happening in your life right now as an adult, it's your fault. If you take that the wrong way, good. That means you're not accepting the blame. If you take that the right way, it means, so the reason I have no money in the bank and I'm always late on my car payment is because I went out drinking 3 times last month instead of just staying, saving. Like, everything trickles down. And once you take that effect and start taking responsibility for everything in your life gets better. And it's eerie how quickly it happens when you just make that switch, because people around you see it. You treat people differently in person. You get rid of the ego, you become more humble, and you just become a better version of yourself. And when that happened for me, I no longer blame anybody else for anything that happens to me. And it just flipped the switch on for me.
Mm. And that's like the saying you were talking about before, like how you do one thing is how you do everything.
That's my favorite example of that is the grocery carts at the shopping market. So I always say you can tell who the successful people are at a grocery store because they walk the cart back to the cart where they got it from. The fucking poor people, the lazy people, they're the ones that just leave the cart by their car for someone else to move.
Yeah, and then dent someone else's car.
Yeah, because guess what? Fuck you. You don't matter to me. That's why you'll never be successful.
True, 100%, man. Couldn't agree more. That my last question as well, which is a bit more serious in nature, I ask all my guests, Paul, and I appreciate your time here, is can you identify, and some of this you've talked about, a specific fear in your life that you've had or currently do have? And I think I know what this is going to be, and this is going to be interesting. What it is, what it was, and what you learned from overcoming it, or if it is still present, what you're learning from facing this said fear.
I mean, I think my greatest fear has been being a failure in life, having to rely on other people. I think my current driving force around every day is I want my business to succeed for my family, for my employees, for my clients. So that kind of drives me. If I see somebody else doing something that I'm not doing, I think, I better start doing that. I really pay attention to what other companies are doing that are successful. So, I often think about that, what my biggest fear is, and it's not losing my hair. It's not losing my muscles. It's not, but it's literally just a down trickle effect of being like a financial failure, kind of just not being able to provide. So, you combine that with my natural kind of desire to always be getting better. It just seems to make me a pretty good business owner. Like I'm very driven.
Yeah, and that's bang on what I thought it would be. And it's not because I'm a mind reader, but I started noticing, I'll share this with you because this kind of reinforces your last point. And I think you'll find it interesting. So after about maybe the first 20 episodes of like doing this podcast, a couple of years ago, I was like, I used to ask this question. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, hang on. And I'm like, I'm picking people who've inspired me. Right? I'm picking people who I feel are on the same page and have a good story. So I don't really get people on that. I'm like, I don't know if there's any value there, but you can learn something from everybody. So, there's that as well. But I started noticing this trend, and it didn't matter how it was said. It's people who succeed in life seem to share something in common. Their biggest fear is not succeeding, or fear of failure, however you say it, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, shit. So I'm listening. I'm sitting there thinking, hang on, Alex. This is what all of these people have in common. They feel like they're not good enough to a degree, or like, I need to do better. So therefore, you consistently are doing more or on the edge and doing the best for your clients or whatever it is, because you feel that that's that biggest fear. Like, man, I might not be doing enough, or I might not be good enough, and I want to succeed. And man, that's a fire that can never be put out.
Yeah. I often wonder if I will ever actually retire, because it's like, I'm just going to always have that desire to just be 1% better all the time. So yeah, like I said, I feel like at 45, I'm just getting started, crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, no, I love it, Paul. I think that's great. Like you said, not necessarily, I mean, when people say I'm not here for a good time and a long time, I always joke and say I'm here for both, because
oh yeah, no, I truly believe in, yeah, enjoying life. I think everything in moderation, including moderation. Like you gotta.
This is very true. This is very true. Paul, well, thank you for being so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. I know there's some great insights in there as well, especially within the story and some of the
Of
threads of
course.
conversation. For people who do want to follow along though with your journey, or perhaps even actually reach out genuinely for possibly some help, or even to inquire for coaching, or even to be a
Yeah.
coach. Where's the best place for people to follow along, reach out, and find you?
Prophysique.com is our kind of flagship website. It has everything on there from our calorie calculator to our podcast and my YouTube videos to also you can download some free guides for beginners, but there's also you can go in there and fill out a questionnaire to set up a phone call. I have a young lady named Sandy who reviews every single inquiry and aligns you with the best coach, whether that be me, Steven, Kaylee, any of our amazing coaches. And and ultimately, if you want to find me, just type my name into Google because I'm the only Revelia. So, you want to find my Instagram, my YouTube, our podcast is called the Pro Physique Code. So, I think we put out a fair amount of information. I'd like to put out more, but it's always trying to strike that balance between working enough to have good content, not just talking all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely a bit of a balance there in that respect. And I'll make sure, as ever, for everyone listening, I'll put those links in the show notes. Paul, any last thoughts before we sign off?
Just thanks for your time, and hopefully you can get over to Australia and get a beer with you.
Mate, definitely. Would see that up. You've got a friend in the Gold Coast, so
I'll keep an
hopefully
eye on the Arnolds for March if they bring it back. I know they might change the name or do whatever they got to do, but I feel like that big fitness expo is going to be back.
This is true, and it's such an iconic one as well. And I hope for all the athletes it's back, because God knows people been get shredded too many times and they can't step on stage.
Yeah.
um,
Have you guys had a bodybuilding show since all this stuff started?
well, no, not bodybuilding. There's been so we do. It's called WBFF. You familiar with the
Yeah.
federation?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I have athletes that compete there.
Right, exactly. Super popular. So we've had one in Queensland state, to my knowledge, and a lot of them have got cancelled. I think a couple of other federations have got one away, but most of them, yeah, they've been cancelled, especially the bigger ones too. Like a lot of my friends who have been competing, they are for the second time now. Unfortunately, having to reverse diet, or at least try and maintain. But I just feel a bit bad for them, especially because some of them it's their first time, and you know how it is, Paul. When you're getting shredded, that's no joke, and it's a lot of dedication. And it's not even the carrot on the stick; it's just the whole getting to that point, and them not even experiencing what it's like,
Yeah.
to get the tan on, to get on the stage, to do the posing. If you know, it's pretty magic,
Yeah.
and you quickly find out whether it's for you or not. So, yeah, hope things can resume pretty soon. That's for sure.
Me too, buddy.
Yeah.
All right.
Guys, for everyone listening, thank you. I'm not going to bore you. If you like it, share it, comment, all that good stuff. And until the next episode, stay fearless.
Thanks, Alex.
Quick message for those of you who are confused, frustrated, and sick and tired of not seeing the results that you want or deserve. Make sure that you click the apply for coaching button in the description below and line up a completely free consultation with myself, where we can discover if it's a good fit as client and coach, and take your health and physique to the next level once and for all.